What's up, everybody? Tom Pelissero here at the Edward Jones Dome shortly after the Minnesota Vikings once again keep their season alive, beat the Rams 36-22 in a game that in some ways mirrors the game against Chicago a week ago that they won at the Metrodome. Adrian Peterson goes off for another monster day, 212 rushing yards on 24 carries. You come up with two key turnovers, both of them leading to points. One of them, the Kevin Williams fumble recovery that leads to a field goal. The Everson Griffin pick six on a zone drop. But twice in this game, the Rams had a chance to take back the momentum. And what happened each time? The best player perhaps in the NFL right now steps up and makes a play. You've got, in the early going, the Rams come back, tie the game at 7 after the Vikings seem to have a lot of positive momentum coming out of that opening drive where they convert on 4th and 1. Ponder has a scramble for a touchdown. The Rams had come back, tied the game up at 7. What happens? Adrian Peterson busts loose on a really well-schemed run based on the way that the Rams were crashing the line of scrimmage. When you've got people blitzing you, what you want to do is hit them where they're not. You got a defensive tackle sort of backing out of there. That guy gets mugged up. Jerome Felton sticks his lead block. Adrian Peterson has all sorts of daylight. You got an 82-yard touchdown run. Then later in the game, after the Vikings appeared at halftime to have really put this game away, it's always, with 30 minutes left, that's always a little bit too much time. The Rams started to get some momentum going, and what happens on this occasion, it's a lot of Adrian Peterson, a run that's supposed to go to the left. It's relatively congested, a lot like I am right now, so I apologize for that. Peterson cuts it back over to the right, goes off for 50 yards, and all of a sudden now you've tilted the field back again. This is, just like we said last week, the way that the Minnesota Vikings want to play, and the way that, based on how they're constructed, they have to be able to play right now. Now, can you count on Peterson going off for 212 yards every single week? Probably not, but Christian Ponder maybe got away with a couple of throws into tight windows, nearly has a slant jumped by Trumaine Johnson late, but he finishes 17 out of 24 for only 131 yards, but still high efficiency sorts of passing, a lot of crossing routes. They ran a lot of bootlegs. They ran 3 bootlegs on that opening series. Clearly wanted to figure out if they could get Christian Ponder into some sort of a rhythm and maybe slow down the Rams a little bit, not allow them to play completely downhill and stop the running game play side. That's where you back out on the weak side of those plays, hit the tight ends and the flats, maybe hold those linebackers a little bit longer so they can't crash in there. The Rams did a pretty good job, honestly, of bottling up Adrian Peterson in the early going. They had a lot of positive turns today overall, but the 2 game-changing runs by Adrian Peterson, the 2 turnovers, that's really what keeps the Minnesota Vikings alive in this game. They had a creative game plan on defense, blitzing a lot more than they'd shown. Sam Bradford said it after the game in his press conference that the Vikings were one of the lowest percentage pressure teams, which they always are in the NFL coming into this game, but the Vikings showed a lot more pressure. They were able to create some heat. The Griffin interception was on a zone blitz. You had a couple of sacks by linebackers in this game, which the Vikings really don't get a whole lot. Offensively, again, it's a pretty good game plan. I would say this is 5 consecutive weeks now that you've had a game plan in place and you've had an approach that has worked, that has been good enough for the Vikings to be able to compete. Now, they lose in Chicago because Adrian Peterson coughs up the football, because they drop a bunch of passes. Christian Ponder throws a bad interception. They lose in Green Bay because of a couple of key mistakes by Christian Ponder. But in both those games in Chicago, they were up in that game before things get away from them. In Green Bay, they were up in that game until things get away from them. What they've done the last 2 weeks is not allowed themselves to fall in those sorts of holes. They've come out, they've been aggressive, as evidenced by going forward on 4th and 1 on that opening series. Frazier preached all week, we're going to be aggressive in every situation where we possibly can be aggressive. On this day, it worked out. 8-6 heading down to Houston. You look at the standings right now, both Houston and Green Bay have things to play for. They're both in the postseason, but first-round byes still on the line. I don't think there's any reason for Houston in particular to punt on next week's game. I think that they're going to see the best shot from the Minnesota Vikings. These guys came out from the beginning of the game, and I asked some guys, because I've been watching in warm-ups, and I asked people in the locker room, was it an illusion, or did guys come out with just a little bit extra juice today? And I was told, yeah, when you're in that one-and-done situation, you almost have to. You have to come out and be able to put your best possible effort forward. They didn't do that back at Soldier Field. They didn't do that at Lambeau Field, as much as certain things did go right in both those games. Last week against Chicago, at the Metrodome, they did it. Here in St. Louis, against the Rams team that does have a good defensive front, but clearly has its flaws as well, they did that. Can they do it against the Texans? Can they do it against Green Bay? And will that be enough to get them into the postseason? All they can do is win those 2 football games and let the rest of the chips fall where they may. I'm headed back to Minneapolis tomorrow morning Full Vikings coverage, as always, at 1500ESPN.com. We'll see you.